first the memoir in 2006 and then the movie with Julia Roberts in 2010, then you know that this was not just a book. This was a decade-defining phenomenon. The book starts with the author, a woman named Elizabeth Gilbert, in her early 30s, sobbing, crying in the middle of the night into the floor of her bathroom because she does not want to be married anymore. In the book, she doesn't speak directly about why her marriage ended, but later on she has shared that a contributing factor was her decision to remain childless. So Gilbert, in Eat, Pray, Love, gets a divorce. She has a short-lived but devastating situationship, and she decides that she needs an international trip to heal and get to know herself again outside of a romantic context. So she swears off sex for the duration of the trip, and she goes first to Italy to eat, then to India to pray, and then to Bali, where she falls in love with a Brazilian man named Jose. She calls him Felipe in the book. Gilbert has said that she felt ambivalent about marriage as an institution, but she and Jose did get legally married, in large part so that he could immigrate to the United States. That was almost 20 years ago. To say that Eat, Pray, Love was a success would be a criminal understatement. The book was on top of the New York Times bestseller list for 3.5 years straight. It led to travel packages and spiritual retreats and cultural references. I had a friend who lived in Ubud, Bali in the 2010s and told me that it had been taken over by Eat, Pray, Love paraphernalia and trinkets and tours, and even the chance to stay at the house where Elizabeth Gilbert stayed or schedule a session with a local spiritual healer. The Eat, Pray, Love movie came out in 2010 with Julia Roberts playing Elizabeth Gilbert and Javier Bardem playing her love interest, and the movie grossed over $200 million. So at this point in the narrative, Elizabeth Gilbert possesses something that very few writers will ever possess, and that is fuck you money. That will become relevant later. After Eat, Pray, Love, she published a few other books, some fiction, some nonfiction. Her most read was a sort of spiritual how-to guide for creatives called Big Magic. She has a very popular Substack account and 2 TED Talks with millions of views. Even if you personally haven't read Elizabeth Gilbert's books, you have almost certainly read things written in the style of Elizabeth Gilbert. She is cited as a major influence for famous writers like Glennon Doyle, author of Untamed, Cheryl Strayed, author of Wild, Brené Brown, author of The Gifts of Imperfection, and her style has also really defined the way that people write travel blogs and even Instagram captions on travel accounts or the scripts for a travel Insta video. If you followed Gilbert's personal life kind of passively as I did over the last 10 years or so, then you've heard some intriguing details emerge. In 2016, Gilbert announced that she and Jose were getting a divorce after about 10 years of marriage. She also announced that she had left Jose to be in a relationship with her employee and friend who was a woman named Raya, and that Raya had terminal cancer. After Raya's death, Gilbert announced that she was dating an Irish photographer named Simon MacArthur, who was Raya's best friend and roommate during her lifetime. They have since broken up, and Gilbert is now single. Did we follow all that? Gilbert talked about some of these things publicly, but not in great detail, until finally she shared that she would be publishing a memoir about Raya, whom she calls the love of her life, and their brief but remarkably romantic love affair. Her first nonfiction book in a decade, called All the Way to the River, Love, Loss, and Liberation. Fans expected another joyful, raw, and heartfelt story where all the good days mean travel and adventure and sunshine, and all the bad days are just a vehicle to soul growth and self-discovery. And then here's what happened instead. Before the book came out, Gilbert published a portion in The Cut. Many fans' eyes grew wide at the revelation that the true story of what happened behind the curtain in Elizabeth Gilbert's life was much more troubling than anything she had written before. And then the early reviews of the book started coming in. One book reviewer named Danielle McClellan read the book and actually refused to give it a review without explicitly stating why. Then the famous writer and one of my personal favorites, Gia Tolentino, wrote a review of the book in The New Yorker called Elizabeth Gilbert's Latest Epiphanies, in which she revealed that there were even more disturbing details that were omitted from the excerpt in The Cut, including the fact that Gilbert admits in this book to, at one point, attempting to murder her girlfriend, Raya. I wrote this script on September 8th. The book came out yesterday. It's now September 10th, so I haven't read it yet. So what I'm about to share with you is what I gathered from the Cut excerpt and the Gia Tolentino review. Now, I have an online book club. We meet every month. It's on my Patreon. It's $3. We talked about it amongst ourselves, and we're going to read this book. by Elizabeth Gilbert. We would love for you to join us. I'll leave a link to my Patreon in the video description. It'll probably be under the sponsorship, so you'll have to click see more. And you can sign up and come to our meeting and share what you think of the book. Next month-ish, I'll make a video here on my YouTube channel with my full review, and I'll include in the video observations and thoughts from my book club, and maybe from you, viewer. Maybe you join, you make a good observation, you help me make a full review of the book. I don't know. I would love to see you there. So the other night, I got a brutal headache. So I did what I always do. I take an ibuprofen, I wait 45 minutes, and I go back to bed. So I take my medicine, I put a cold compress on my head, and I started to wait. But this time the pain was so bad that when I thought 45 minutes had gone by, I checked my phone and 6 minutes had passed. So I'm like, shit, this seems bad. And you know what comes next? I start searching symptoms. I find out that I have a brain tumor and a stroke and internal bleeding all at once, and it's over for me. So what if, instead of spending that time searching for symptoms, I looked around for actual doctors in my network who could give me some guidance and some peace of mind in a moment when I honestly felt very alone and needed some professional support? My sponsor, ZocDoc, is a free website where you can easily search and compare high-quality, in-network doctors so you can find the right doctor for you. I love working with this sponsor because I genuinely think that this tool can help people navigate the complex US healthcare system. ZocDoc makes it easy to book in-network appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers. With ZocDoc, you can filter for doctors by insurance, location, and specialties, and see reviews by verified patients so you can choose the best, most convenient care for you. So I decided to browse around on ZocDoc, see if I could find people who would help with my headaches. The booking process was super easy, and I actually got an appointment just within 2 days of when I booked it, which is kind of unheard of with like doctors in the US. The doctor was a really good fit. I felt super cared for. I felt heard, and I was given some really useful solutions for my headaches, which is something that I've been dealing with for my whole life. When you found the doctor you need, you can see online like their actual appointment openings, choose a time that works for you, and instantly book with just a few clicks. Plus, ZocDoc helps you get appointments fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking, and you can even score same-day appointments. No need to call doctors' offices and wait on hold either. ZocDoc lets you do everything online, so you can quickly make an appointment and get on with your day. So the next time you're stuck with a pounding headache or spiraling after searching for your symptoms online, don't waste hours convincing yourself that it's the worst-case scenario. Go to ZocDoc by using my link, ZocDoc.com/Siobhan Breyer. My name is a little hard to spell. It's SIOBHAN, to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. Thank you so much to ZocDoc for sponsoring this video. And now let's get back into it. For now, I'm going to share what I've been able to kind of piece together about the true story from the advanced reviews. If nothing else, just please watch this video because this shit is blowing my mind and I want to talk about it with people. Okay, so here is a chronological timeline of what went down in Elizabeth Gilbert's life, and specifically what happened between her and Raya and the things that she will be writing about in this new memoir. So Elizabeth Gilbert went to NYU, and when she graduated, she decided that in order to be a good writer, she would not get a master's and study writing, but would instead lead an interesting and adventurous life because she believed that that was where true inspiration came from. I didn't realize this until I read the Tolentino review, but Elizabeth Gilbert, before she became a mainstream author, was pretty well regarded and celebrated as a young indie writer by other academics and people very familiar with this niche. Tolentino points out that Gilbert is a good writer, and before she became an internationally known celebrity author, she wrote some high-profile journalistic pieces, she wrote some very well-reviewed short stories, and it was around this time when Gilbert was young and gorgeous and living in New York and part of the scrappy writing and art scene that she got married to her first husband, and she also met Raya. Raya was sexy and queer and had a badass sort of like fuck you attitude. She was sober due to major issues with addiction in the past. She was a hair and makeup artist, and she also made music. Elizabeth Gilbert really admired her, and they became close friends. After Eat, Pray, Love's breakout success, Elizabeth Gilbert is married to her second husband, Jose, and she has no children. So suddenly she has as much money as a small island nation and no idea of what to do with it. She starts to give her close friends enormous gifts. For example, paying their bills and tuition, giving them expensive jewelry, paying for their weddings, and even buying her friends multiple houses. At one point during the 2008 financial crisis, she writes in her book of this scene where she walks up and down the street asking local small business owners if they want money. Then Raya, Gilbert's friend, falls on hard times, so Gilbert gives her a house. She had bought a refurbished church without having seen it online from Laos that she wasn't really using, so she gave it to Raya. Around this time, Gilbert secretly begins to fall in love with Raya. As Gilbert was going on tour and doing speaking engagements and book signings, she hired Raya to come travel with her and be her hair and makeup artist. Once during a book signing, I believe, Gilbert jokes to a stranger that the only reason that her and Raya aren't together romantically is because she's married and trying to be good. On these tours with Gilbert, Raya, who was previously sober, begins drinking and partying again, but I believe not doing any harder drugs. Then in 2016, Raya gets diagnosed with liver and pancreatic cancer, and she's given 6 months to live. Gilbert, faced with Raya's imminent death, realizes that she can't hold in this major secret anymore, and she tells Raya that she is in love with her. After a pause, Raya takes Gilbert in her arms and says, baby, my beautiful baby, why did you take so long to come to me?" Raya's doctors give her essentially 2 options. Either she can go through chemo and extend her life slightly, but she would be very sick for the last few months of her life from the chemo. Or she could forego treatment, meaning that her death would be sooner, but when it did come, it would be quite sudden. And at first, Raya makes the decision that she would rather forego treatment, saying that she didn't want to be sick and weak for the final months of her life. And she said that she can, quote, live my life to the max, man, and then flame the fuck out. So now that Gilbert has confessed her love and Raya has decided to really live it up these last few months of her life, Gilbert clears her schedule, files for divorce, and makes herself and her bank account completely available to Raya in her final days. They go on a rager. They drink, they smoke weed, they take Xanax, psilocybin, sedatives, sleeping pills, and ecstasy. Gilbert gives Raya a penthouse, a Range Rover, a piano, a Rolex. She rents out full music studios so that Raya can record original songs. They eat the best meals and they fuck and they trash the penthouse with wild parties. And then Raya's family, distraught, begs her to get chemo, to at least try to fight this, try to live. And Raya agrees. And thus, Gilbert is no longer a drinking buddy and muse, but instead a full-time caretaker. Raya gets very sick, and she fully relapses. At first with just a few prescribed opiates and cocaine, and then handfuls of opioids every hour, then injected heroin. Gilbert pays for her procedures and buys her the drugs. Raya and Gilbert begin to fight. They go through brutal, hours-long screaming matches. Gilbert writes that Raya became a venomous junkie. At this point, Raya had lived for 9 months more than the doctors told her that she would, and both of these women are experiencing a serious emotional and chemical come-down from the romantic highs at the beginning of their sexual relationship. Gilbert describes Raya as abusive during this time, but in the excerpt of the book that I read, she doesn't go into further detail, and this is when Gilbert, desperate, decides that she will literally murder Raya. Raya, despite being pretty out of it, realizes that something strange is happening and thwarts the plan without fully realizing what Gilbert was trying to do. If you have read anything by Elizabeth Gilbert, then you might recognize this as her rock bottom. You might feel an epiphany coming up, but the epiphany might not be what you would think it would be. From this whole experience where she tries to kill her girlfriend, her epiphany is that she is a sex and love addict and she needs to go to Sex Addicts Anonymous meetings. She goes through this revelation in the excerpt that I read in the cut. And as the reader, after going through this crazy turn of events, you suddenly remember that this is a self-help book. And now Gilbert is going to turn this whole experience into a lesson that I guess is supposed to be somehow relatable and relevant to my life. But when I was reading it, I was like, I gotta say, man, you kind of lost me. You kind of lost me with the whole murder thing. So Gilbert starts going to these meetings meetings while Raya is still doing fear and loathing amounts of drugs in the penthouse. And Gilbert comes to the conclusion that she needs to break up with Raya and move out. She can no longer be her caretaker or girlfriend. And I'm just going to read this excerpt from the book. So she tells Raya that she's moving out and leaving her. And Raya responds, "But I'm dying," her eyes filling with tears. "You can't abandon someone who's dying." And Gilbert replies, "I hear you, and I accept that you're dying. I've been preparing for months to say goodbye to you, but this might be the moment when we have to say our goodbyes, because I won't stick around for what you've gotten yourself into. If we need to say our goodbyes now, then I will tell you right now that I love you more than I have ever loved anyone, and I always will. You are the love of my life and all of my lives. I wanted to walk all the way to the river with you, but that might not be possible for us anymore because I can't survive the way you're living. It's too costly for me. It's too degrading to my soul. And if the real Raya were here, she would totally agree with me on this. You and I both know that's true." Close quote. I'm just trying to imagine facing imminent death and my girlfriend and caretaker hits me with some setting boundaries Instagram caption, therapy speak type of, "You are so valid and I literally love you to the moon and back, but you are going to die alone. You are going to die alone." What is there even to do in that scenario? Okay, I'm not reviewing it yet. We're going to review it. We're going to review it in the book club, and we're going to have a video about it. The excerpt in the cut doesn't talk about Raya's best friend Simon, the photographer who Gilbert dated after Raya. I did learn about that kind of from like other sources. That was something that I knew about, I think in like 2019 when it happened. So we will wait to see if that is discussed in the book. In Gia Tolentino's review, which I'll link to in the description as well, she goes more deeply into Gilbert's career as a writer, and she sort of does an autopsy of how she went from being this very talented intellectual starlet to whatever this is. Tolentino also shares in her review that Raya and Gilbert reconciled before Raya's death in 2018, and Gilbert admitted to attempting to kill her, and Raya said, "That's fucking awesome. You found your darkness, dude." In the excerpt that Elizabeth Gilbert published in the cut, she didn't mention the murder attempt. That was something that Gia Tolentino pointed out. So since the book just came out, I'll link to the book itself in the description if you want to read it. And again, I'll link my Patreon where you can sign up for our book club to talk about it with us. If not, subscribe, ring the bell for free, and I'll see you in a few weeks when we finish reading the book and we'll give our official review, which I'll post on this channel. Since the book hadn't come out at time of writing this script, the reviews were only from fans and from people who had advanced copies. And the book had a little over a 4-star rating on Goodreads, and people were commenting and saying things like, "I love you, Liz Gilbert." And then there's this one random review from somebody going, "How does not a single review on here mention that Gilbert tried to murder Raya?" I get it that Gilbert wanted to live a cool life and write about it. At the same time, let's just remember, as we're discussing All the Way to the River, that Raya was not a character in a book. She was a person, and her death wasn't a fictional plot point in a book in which Elizabeth Gilbert is the main character. It was something that happened in real life, and Raya has living friends and family members who mourn her and miss her, and who probably have very conflicting and maybe even disturbing feelings about the way that she died and what happened before her death. I just can't help but feel that the early reviews would be very different and much less forgiving if this weren't written by a wealthy white woman with a huge existing fan base. But I will read the book and I'll try to go into it with an open mind, and maybe Elizabeth Gilbert will surprise me. Feel free to join me for our book club discussion. And if not, I'll see you in a few weeks with our review. Thank you.